So I wanted to begin with the thank you because this conference has been something that I've been looking forward to. And so I want to explain a little bit about where I am today in reference to the conference. I want to begin by thanking Ching Lee, Ken, and Rick, and all the other people who helped to organize this conference, but specifically them because they invited me to participate. And I want to especially recognize Rick because he also sponsored my Zoom attendance. So I'm showing right now a slide with some reference materials. I'm not going to, read them to you, but I just wanted to give credit for the background materials that I'm going to use because I'm not going to be citing the sources in each time I use them for purposes of the presentation. But I was informed initially about this concept of workplace mobbing when I came across the summary for the workplace mobbing conference that happened in Novotel, Brisbane on October 14 to 15 of 2004. And it was prepared by Kenneth West Hughes, who I did not know about at the time. And again, I did not know anything about workplace mobbing. I started researching about it because I needed to figure out what I was dealing with. And I'll explain that a little bit more in the subsequent slides. So that was my introduction to the terminology. And then I started to find additional sources, including on workplace bullying and mobbing in the United States. And so my focus has been more of what has been done in the United States, but noticing that we are lagging behind in comparison to other countries. So how I started to use the terminology bullying to sort of address what I saw happening to me and to others. I don't know if some of you may have heard about a book that was published called Reflections on Presumed Incompetent was the name of the book. It's now in its second edition, so there's a Presumed Incompetent too. And two of the editors of the different stories in that book were law professors. One of them, Carmen Gonzalez, invited me to moderate the plenary panel of the conference that happened at Berkeley Law School. And I was a very junior scholar at the time. I came to the Legal Academy in 2009. And here I was at a plenary panel of a conference by invitation, moderating more seasoned and prestigious, law school scholars. And at the time, that was, a major accomplishment for somebody who was a junior professor. But that was not received well in my law school. In fact, I think that, it was one of the many instances where something that should have been received as a positive, because I was able to put the name of the law school in places where it had never been before, was actually held against me. And I think that somebody mentioned the term envy as something that makes somebody a target of the mobbing. Well, I experienced some of that, including because of my difference from the group that I will explain. So I started writing law review articles, and for those of you who are not familiar with law review articles, they tend to be longer articles, sometimes 50 pages, with heavy footnotes to sources for almost everything we state that has a factual foundation. So we could have, for example, over 300 footnotes in a law review article. So they're very, long, substantive pieces. And I did not envision when I joined the Legal Academy that I was going to be writing about what I wrote in these law review articles. So my main emphasis was on immigration law and the intersection of criminal law and immigration law, which is crimmigration. So some of my scholarship was in that area of law. And I would have to say that my most cited article was in the area of crimmigration, my first article. But I deviated from that initial scholarship because I needed to understand what was happening to me. And frankly, I needed to cope with what was happening to me. And because I was spending so much time researching about it, I decided that I needed to make that productive and turn it into scholarship. I understand that I have 20 minutes for my presentation, so please somebody warn me when I have 5 minutes left.
You have 22 minutes actually, and I will warn
Okay,
you.
wonderful, even better. So these are some of the articles that I've written, to get to finally workplace mobbing. If you notice, my article on workplace mobbing is a work in progress. It's been a work in progress for many years now, including because I was going through the mobbing and the story did not have an end yet. And I kept waiting for, a positive end to the story, trying to turn it into a positive end to the story because I try to do that in all my other articles. And what I mean by positive, it's not necessarily a positive outcome, but it's anything that I can turn into a positive, even if it is in terms of lessons learned, in terms of suggestions for how do we go forward from wherever we are. So I'm going to just briefly explain how I got to understand my understanding of workplace mobbing in terms of the context of what was happening to me. So this idea that workplace mobbing springs from, animal behavior. And I was familiar with what chickens do. As a child, I did grow up watching what chickens do to other chickens. And in fact, as a child, I defended a chicken who was the target of this behavior and was being ostracized and picked on by the other chickens. And so it was an instinct that I developed since I was a child of always looking out for the underdog and trying to make a difference, right? In even then in a life of an animal. So one of the things that as I was researching on workplace mobbing stuck with me was the idea that the individual pecks do little harm, but their cumulative effect is to kill the targeted bird. And so then I started to think about, well, how do you name this in the area of the workplace? And that's when the term workplace mobbing finally helped me to conceptualize what was happening beyond what I had seen happen in the mobbing, for example, of animal behavior. So workplace mobbing, as some of before me explained, is an impassioned collective movement by managers and or coworkers to exclude, punish, and humiliate a targeted worker. It's a desperate urge to crush and eliminate the target. It spreads through the work unit, infecting one person after another like a contagious disease. The target comes to be seen as absolutely abhorrent, outside the circle of respectability, deserving only of contempt. A steadily broader range of hostile words and actions toward the target are to be deployed. When I read this definition, I really could not believe that human beings in a workplace, and in a professional workplace at that, could engage in this type of behavior. Now, I was not naive because I was a lawyer by the time I came to the legal academy as a professor. So I was not naive that human beings can be mean, can be ruthless, and can do horrible things. But I was naive about the group behavior that can happen in a workplace, such as an academic workplace. So, how is mobbing different from, for example, penalizing a coworker on the basis of not meeting the job requirements? Where mobbing is a reason, well, the latter, for example, being fired for not meeting the job requirements, is a reasoned routine managerial procedure normally directed with regret at an underachiever. Mobbing, on the other hand, is a furious collective attack made with undisguised glee on an overachiever or someone seen as threatening to good and decent employees. And so, in my prior experiences, I had dealt with discrimination. I had dealt with, being the one and only woman, for example, in accounting, including in my educational experience at the time. There were very few women in accounting and even fewer women of color in accounting. But what had always been my saving grace had been that I was a hard worker, had been that by all standard measures, I met the standards and even exceeded the standards. So I was what maybe some people may call an overachiever. But that had been my saving grace in other environments where, I may have dealt with discrimination, but that was my way to cope with it through my work. So then, I couldn't understand what was happening in my academic workplace, where I thought that, the legal academy and the academy in general was meant to be a place where people should, strive for the excellence that we want to impart upon our students. So why was I dealing with something that, was called a mobbing syndrome? And what was that, right? So I found this definition, the mobbing syndrome, as a malicious attempt to force a person out of the workplace through unjustified accusations, humiliation, general harassment, emotional abuse, and or terror. A ganging up by the leader of the organization, by superiors, by coworkers or subordinates who rally others into systematic and frequent mob-like behavior. I had a hard time understanding how so many people could join in something like this. And I think that this is what's difficult for people who don't do the research on workplace mobbing, are not open to maybe hearing about it and understanding that it's something that has been defined by researchers, because it's very hard to understand how so many people could be ganging up on one person in a professional environment. And then what is the difference between bullying and mobbing? Because I think that bullying is, something that took hold a little bit more in average society, right? And the concept of being bullied in school, for example. So what is the difference between, bullying and mobbing in terms of the workplace? Well, it is like bullying in that the object is to rob the target of dignity and self-respect. However, the mobbing is not a single swaggering bully that the target is up against, but the juggernaut of collective will. The message to the target is that everybody wants you out of here. And so when I was looking for slides, a picture to show how the mobbing felt to me, I could not understand how so many eyes could be watching what was happening to me and not do anything about it. And I had to then, do more research about how to name the different people that were participating, because not all of them were the mobbers. Some of them were just onlookers. And I found these definitions about the different people that participate as instigator, chief eliminator, collaborator, bystander, or as a target's guardian or rescuer. And the fact that some people can have different roles in different cases. Now, one of these words stuck to me, this collaborator word, because in my workplace, there was a lot of reference to collectiveness as a good, to group mentality. Collaboration was something that was constantly, named as a goal of the organization and of the group. And in my case, that collaboration was part, of the mobbing. So beyond that, I came across Gary Namey and Ruth Namey's bully types. And these, definitions of the screaming Mimi, the constant critic, the two-headed snake, the gatekeeper, helped me to put into perspective the confusion that I was feeling when I was seeing some people who would act a certain way and say certain things like, this language of collaboration for the good of the collective. And yet I was feeling like, but I'm not feeling that collaboration. I'm not being included in that collaboration. If anything, that collaboration is being used to harm me. And in particular, the two-headed snake was very difficult to deal with. Because the screaming Mimi was something more than, everybody knew who that bully was. But the two-headed snake, when the two-headed snake was coming after me, was a lot more difficult to deal with. And I'll explain a little bit more about it in the next slides.
So there's a problem with your mic.
Oh, really? Can you hear me now?
That's fine.
Hello?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So let me get closer. So the systemic nature of the workplace mobbing process, the 5 phases, the conflict, aggressive acts, management involvement, branding the target as difficult or mentally ill, ultimate goal expulsion of the target. Knowing these 5 phases helped me because I knew that I wasn't imagining what was happening to me. But it was like, I thought I could stop it. I thought I could stop it before it got to 4 or 5. And in fact, I did not know that 4 was going on behind the scenes in secretive processes that I didn't even know about. And
Only,
then the ultimate goal was the expulsion. Hello?
only 5 minutes to go.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was timing 9. So with this said, I'm going to skip some slides to get to, these are some of the behaviors that I dealt with. So I dealt with all 4 bully types. I have documentation for many of the attacks. And so today when Frances was speaking, I could relate to a lot of what she said because she spoke about documentation. And I teach evidence. Well, I taught evidence as a law professor. And so for me, whenever I would, make a conclusion or advocate or make an allegation, I wanted to always have evidence. And so that's what's a little different, I think, about my situation is that because it is a public institution and because the attacks were so blatant in terms of the allegations, the investigations, and the fact that I was able to get sources of the information through public records requests. I have video recordings, although they don't have audio because they're surveillance videos. I do have some audio recordings that were part of investigations. I have a lot of documents in terms of printed materials. I had to deal with a formal complaint by a 2-headed snake, the main 2-headed snake that was coming after me. I had to deal with informal behind the scenes complaints to the dean, the provost, the Equal Opportunity Programs Office, university police, and other institutional actors, and no one told me about this. There was also physical intimidation that I got, on surveillance videos. There was the encouragement of student complaints, and it was based on race solidarity. There was anonymous complaint. Constantly looking for access to harm me. The 2-headed snake was constantly monitoring where I would be. So she was there, including at conferences, including in panels, in the law school. I would come into the law school every day wondering what I would face that day and how I was going to have to defend against it, how I was going to have to document it. Initially, I didn't like the idea of cameras in the law school. But subsequently, I wanted to be on the cameras all the time so that they could document that I didn't do what I would be accused of or that somebody else did to me what happened. So, like I said, the 2-headed snake was the most difficult bully type for me to deal with. And I'm going to now talk about what I did in terms of my research about how do I deal with this beyond the institution, because the institution was not doing anything to help me. Now, I endured the mobbing for nearly 15 years. So the Association of American Law Schools has requirements which are similar to the protected grounds for purposes of anti-discrimination law, right? So the idea that there has to be equal opportunity and there can be no discrimination or segregation on the ground of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, gender, sexual orientation, age, or disability. But there are really no procedures to hold law schools accountable, I found, because during an ABA accreditation visit, I've raised the issue. And basically, the message that I got is you have to go to the court. We do not get involved in employment decisions. But this basis of race, color, religion, right, or this what we call protected grounds, is also the basis of anti-discrimination law. So I decided to turn it into a legal issue. As a lawyer, of course, I was thinking, I feel like a target. I don't feel like a victim. I did not want to acknowledge victimization. I did not want to be a victim.
Maritza,
Yes? Yes.
2 minutes to go.
2 minutes. Oh, God. Okay.
I
And
understand.
so, okay, I'm sorry. I was timing 5:15, 5 minutes still left on my clock. So Title VII anti-discrimination law has protected grounds here based on race, color, national origin, sex, and religion. And when I looked at the definition of hostile work environment, plaintiff must show that a rational jury could find that the workplace is permeated with discriminatory intimidation, ridicule, and insult that is sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the conditions of the victim's employment and create an abusive working environment, and that the victim was targeted for harassment because of the protected ground. Well, this to me is very similar to workplace mobbing definition. So I decided that I was going to make it a part of my federal case as a legal cause of action. So one of the things that I want to highlight in terms of my federal case is that we should not make assumptions about who is a mobbing target and who is a mobber. I worked at a historically Black college university where the overwhelming majority of faculty and students are Black. In the law school, the majority of employees and students are Black, and the majority are Black women. I was hired when the law school was trying to get full American Bar Association accreditation. I was the first and thus far only Hispanic Latina hired in the tenure track in the College of Law at FAMU in Orlando, Florida, a state with a large Hispanic population. I was personally attacked, including racially, in group emails with impunity. I was called all kinds of racial names by Black people. Black women who claimed that they were harassed by the Black male bullies joined with these men in workplace mobbing. So I finally filed a complaint with the United States Equal Opportunity Commission. And I also, as part of that process, I was able to, take depositions. I took the deposition of the president of the university. I took the deposition of the two-headed snake bully mobber. I also took the deposition of the dean who ignored what was happening to me and also never told me about it. I filed my case in fall 2022. And I get that some people are reluctant to file cases that do not believe that, that the law will help them. It is true. It is true that the law, oftentimes, especially in the United States, 80% of these cases are going to be dismissed or ruled in favor of the employer. But like Francis, I believe that some of us have to stand up. Some of us have to file the cases because there were people before us who filed the cases that were initially considered difficult to win, to establish some of the rights that we have today, including as women in the workplace. And so, yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Okay.